Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Not D&D, brought to you by EN Live, part of EN World, the leading tabletop news and review site. I'm your host, Jessica, but much more excitingly, today I have Ken here with me. Ken, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
For people that aren't familiar with you and what you do in the games industry, could you give us a little introduction?
Sure. So my name is Ken Lowery. I've been self-publishing RPG stuff for about a year and a half now, since about February of last year. Really just started, I began with like tables and supplements and adventures that have really started self-publishing full-blown games just this past year.
Amazing. So it sounds like we already have some fans here in the comments popping up. Some people that beta tested this game are really excited to share it and hear more about it, which is fantastic. Some other people who already have the games and really enjoys it. So thanks very much for joining us. If you do have any questions for Ken anytime throughout the stream, just pop them in the comments. I'll pop them up on the screen and we can answer them for you. And if you're listening to the podcast, well, maybe catch it live next time. So Ken, before we get into talking about the game we're here to talk about today, Killer Ratings, which everyone in the comments is already raving about. First of all, I wanted to, as I do with all our guests, ask a little bit about your background with RPGs and kind of how you got to where you are today. So what was your first experience with role-playing games?
First experience with role-playing games was probably a game called Heroes Unlimited, which is 30 years ago now, a while ago, so early 90s. I'm not sure if I ever actually played. But it was, if I recall, and I haven't opened the book in 20 years, so forgive me somewhat if I get the details wrong. It was like a point buying system, so you could super customize your superhero character. So I think junior high study hall was mostly me filling notebooks with characters I was designing and never played, which is pretty familiar to a lot of role-playing gamers, I think.
Yeah.
But that was the one that kind of like really grabbed me, the idea of being able to use these tools just to make anything I wanted, basically. Yeah, that was my first real love in role-playing games.
And when did you first get to actually like play games? Like, you know, what were the first kind of games that you played? And not just created characters and wrote down the rules.
Right. First one was probably I'm not exactly sure. It was either BattleTech, which is sort of a miniatures war game, sort of role-playing games. That might be cheating.
Yeah.
The other one probably was about 14 years old, was D&D, was AD&D second edition, I think.
Classic.
What was the new hotness at that time. Yeah, I was kind of 14. I had friends who were like 15, 16. So I thought, oh, this is cool. I'll go do whatever the hell this is with them. And yeah, I just kind of, I remember being very intimidated the first time around. There's all these rules. Everyone knows everything. I'm a year younger than everyone else here. But honestly, yeah, I took to it really well. And that kind of, I enjoyed it. D&D is the thing you play because other people know it. But that got me down the road to like World of Darkness and all these other games I really, really got into.
Awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of people do start with D&D just because it's very popular and it's what's known, and that's where you kind of get your way in and find the tabletop RPG wider community. And then there's this whole mess of other stuff that you find here, and that leads us to where we are today. So you started playing games when you were quite young, obviously. When did you start? I was going to say, when did you start making and writing games? But it sounds like from your first experience, you were kind of writing ideas and things down with that. So when did that start for you?
Yeah, I've always been poking at them, and of course everyone homebrews and customizes a little bit. I think the first attempt really was about 20 years ago now. So early 2000s, a friend and I, we basically worked together. He had worked up a setting which was very much Stephen King's Dark Tower series, the role-playing game. So it was kind of fantasy, kind of Western, kind of sci-fi, kind of had a lot of those things. And we worked up a system to go with that. And it was very like, it is clear I just spent 5 years reading White Wolf games, because it was all D10s and it was all add two stats together, roll that many. It was very much like that. But that was my first time kind of trying to get under the hood and seeing what made the game work, and how like the choices and rules can like really show you what's important about the game, whether it's combat heavy or social heavy or shared narrative or whatever. That was the first time, and I kind of just stopped for 15 years. I really couldn't tell you why. I did fall out of the hobby for a little bit. I used to have like two full bookcases full of books. I eventually got rid of most of them. But yeah, I think in the past 5-6 years, I really kind of like just felt the urge again in a major way, and really started kind of making plans, flirting with it, beating around the bush about it a few years ago. And really in the past couple of years, I was like, okay, what am I waiting for exactly? No one's going to give me the green light. Just got to go ahead and start.
Definitely. I mean, looking behind you, it looks like that book collection has grown back again over the last 5 years.
Sure.
Just a little bit there. But I mean, you writing RPGs does make a lot of sense, because before the interview, I had a look back at your kind of your career and other things you do, and you've done a lot of stuff in writing, not just tabletop RPGs. So I could see on that list like movie critic, written fiction, newspapers, there's marketing things, billboards, retail, comic books. Discuss, like,
Sure, yeah.
discuss, yeah.
So my original path that I thought I was going to go in my 20s was journalism. So that's
Okay.
what I studied for, and that's what I got into. And for a little bit, for a hot minute there, I was a copy editor, small paper, long gone now. But that was also, I was editorial writing, headline writing, that kind of thing. And that was mid to late 20s. And I was also a movie critic at that time too. I was working freelance for a pop culture website, also long since gone. If you're a freelance writer, please archive everything you write, because those sites will just disappear overnight on you. But yeah, no, I've always, I don't know. People talk about writing in different ways. For me, it's a compulsion. I just have to be doing something. So whether it's my actual day job, and I've been lucky enough where it has been for about the past 10 years now, or not, then it's nights and weekends. I just have to put something down, put it out there into the world. In terms of like concerted efforts outside of my day job stuff, and day job, I've been journalist, and I'm currently in advertising. I'm a creative director now, but I was a copywriter for 10 years of that. And that was billboards, TV commercials, radio spots, social media, kind of, you name it. Writing in that discipline, especially, or do a little bit of everything. But on the side, for about 8 years, I was writing and self-publishing comic books. And honestly, that's still my first kind of creative love. I've done other things. I did a web series for a little while, years and years ago, wrote that and produced that. I had for a while there, based out of the copy editing thing, some friends and I had a spoof Twitter account called Fake AP Style Book, which was the spoofing the style book that a lot of journalists use, the Associated Press style book. And that was 2008, 2009, 2009. Yeah. And that blew up. It went viral, as they say. We did the book deal. We did the interviews with all the national, like, it was a whole thing. This tattoo is the Interrobang avatar we used for the Twitter account. And that kind of steered me into, it kind of helped me step up my game in terms of, okay, what am I writing? Being very deliberate, planning, because that was me. And that was like 11 of my friends working on a project together. And it was down to me and another guy named Mark Hale to really like get it across the finish line, hit these deadlines. We got publishers with marketing budgets waiting on us. So that really like trained me. And then jumped into comic books, something I wanted to do for ages. I self-published for a good 8 years or so, probably 10, 15 stories overall, mostly one shots, trying different art styles, trying different genres, I should say, trying different angles, being anthologies, things like that. And it just kind of never got anywhere. So when I changed to the day job that I have right now, which is fairly demanding, I just said, okay, taking a clean break. That lasted about a year until early last year. I was like, nope, I need to start writing again. So this role-playing games is something I had been poking at since I was like 11, 12 years old. And I hit that moment, like, what the hell am I waiting for? Just get started. You've got a backlog of ideas. No one is going to tell you to start. I've experienced this many times. Just go. So I kind of made a go of it. And I feel like little pieces of, lessons, whatever I picked up in all those different things, and movie critic and journalism and advertising and comic books and all that, I learned little pieces of stuff all along the way that helped me here. Or at least I hope so.
Definitely. And we have someone asking about Night Driver. They said, when's the next issue of Night Driver coming out?
Oh, Nola, you're so funny. So,
oh no.
Night Driver is a comic I wrote that it was the Telltale Heart, basically the Edgar Allan Poe story. But the idea is a guy has killed his coworker, stuffed him in the trunk of his car, and is driving down the highway, and he thinks he hears someone in the trunk of his car, like, moving. And it has a very definitive end. But nonetheless, the very first comment I got about it, I was like, cool, when can we expect the second issue? And I feel like we told the story.
I think it's done.
I feel like it's, done. I think that one, anyway, thank you. Very funny.
All right, fair enough. I think there's another in-joke here that I am going to reference as well. Somebody said that they're here for the man who thinks about death the normal amount.
That's me.
Would you care to include us all on this in-joke?
Sure. Yes. So I don't look like it. I've never looked the part of a goth or whatever. But yeah, I have realized the two standalone games I published have both been about ghosts. Everything I do
Okay.
has some tinge of horror, even if it's like comedy or something like that. There's generally some level of, I don't know, that's been my thing since ever. Half this
Just thinking
bookshelf
about death.
here is horror books. So yeah, just think about death the normal amount.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no,
definitely.
it's just kind of and with killer ratings and with another one, Lighthouse at the End of the World, I really just kind of lean into it and try to come at it from different angles, different genres, different tones. This is fun. This is a little more thoughtful, whatever. And that's that's kind of where that comes from.
Okay, yeah, so that makes sense based on the game we're going to talk about and the comic we just talked about as well. Yeah, both. Yeah, that makes sense. So yes, I'm going to dive us into a little bit into what we're here to talk about, which is killer ratings. So I have the cover image here, and I believe you have a copy in your very hands right now as well.
Sure
So
do.
everyone can have a look. Woo. So tell us about killer ratings. If you were going to give like a little elevator pitch or describe it to somebody, how would you do that?
So it's as the cover says, it's a one-shot zero prep role-playing game where you play reality TV ghost hunters encountering a very real and very homicidal ghost. Yeah, I think
Amazing.
that'll do it. Yeah.
Great. I love the fact that it's one shot and zero prep, because I think sometimes people are a bit intimidated to pick something up and give it a try because they're like, I don't want to learn a new system. I know I'm used to playing this and I don't want to move to another one. So it's really great to hear that there's something like that. So going into a little bit more detail about the game. So the setting, you were saying you are kind of paranormal investigators. Do they believe ghosts are real, or are they like what I imagine a lot of paranormal TV shows are like, where they're like, sure, there's a ghost here, I'll just, and then like what's the vibe with the game?
So the vibe for the game is it's very
Uh-huh.
much it's kind of like glib cynicism is the tone that I'm going for with it. So it's kind of up to you as players whether the individual characters believe in ghosts going in ahead of time. Typically, the answer is no, or yes, but who cares? Or are they going to cut in my angle when I'm on camera? Oh, my cat is running around on my table, little kitty cat. Yeah, so no, it's kind of the idea is meant to be you're here. It's the last episode of the season. You're on the verge of cancellation. You need something big to happen for your show. Stuff starts to happen. Again, it's kind of up to each table how that plays out. But generally, it's supposed to be a surprise. Like, oh, whoa, we're onto something here. But naturally, you're on the verge of cancellation. Some of you are yearning for stardom, so you just push and push and push to get the biggest possible reaction, the biggest possible event live on camera, just so you can be in frame when it happens.
Amazing. And so I was going to ask about, you kind of already answered this. I was going to ask, like, where did the idea for this come from? And you've kind of said just because, of course, you think about death a normal amount, and so that's kind of where it came from. But if we could elaborate on that a little bit more,
Sure.
like where was the inspiration for writing this game?
Yeah, kind of two fronts, really. So in terms of like the type of game it is and the system, like the one shot, the simplicity of it was very much it's between, I guess really it's Grant Howitt's kind of one-page RPGs. Honey Heist is the one everyone knows, but there were a few of those he did like that. And then he did Goblin Quest as well, which a friend of mine worked on it with, named John Morris, did a lot of the art, which is how I first kind of clued into it. And I very much liked that it was that glib, characters are going to die, but that's part of the fun. You do these kind of big broad strokes characters that are really fun to play, and you're invested enough, you want to see what happens next, but not enough that you're sad when they die. So there's that piece of it, which is sort of the mechanical turn of it, and the tone of it. But the other one is, honestly, I did spend years watching, I think it's I would get the names mixed up, Ghost Adventures, which is the one that has Zach what's his face in it, who's just like a Jersey bro. And he always, like, his whole thing was he'd go into places and he'd like yell at the ghosts and like tell them to come out so he could fight them and all that. And like he has the cameraman who's like super incredulous, is moving the camera around really fast. Like they're ridiculous and very much like there's the history of the place, and it's cool to see the interior of an asylum. It's cool and spooky, but like to watch them be ridiculous in these settings. And it was kind of an ongoing joke between me and some Twitter pals, Jason, Jeff, and them, to like, what's our dream show that we could be on? What could we get the Discovery Channel to pay us to do? And we would just run along like, we should investigate beach resorts, like whatever, like whatever silly, ridiculous thing. And it just kind of came from there. Those two thoughts just collided, the like this really fun, glib, quick, easy to get, funny game, and this like ridiculous scenario where the entertainment is what's happening, but it also how you react to what's happening. It's so much about going big, basically, as a character.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense for the inspiration for it. I love those kind of shows. We have them in the UK as well. And it always reminds me of, you get kids at a sleepover trying to do something scary and they just end up like freaking themselves out and running around. Those shows just look like that. It's constantly people like, is there something here? Oh my gosh, something touched my arm. And then everyone goes, oh my God, and runs out. And it's just, I love that drama. So I can picture this being super fun to play in that sense. I imagine with playtesting this, how long was kind of playtesting? How long did that kind of take to get right?
A while, honestly, on and off a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly the mechanics are very simple. There's 2 stats, dice rolls all kind of work the same way. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
not a complicated game.
Yeah.
Honestly, it has kind of a structure: first act, second act, third act, finale.
Mm-hmm.
Getting that finale when the game kind of turns and the ghost finally manifests and it's time to flee,
Yeah.
throwing each other under the bus and all that good stuff. It's very the struggle I had was either the game was too safe or too lethal. Like,
Right.
everyone would survive or everyone would die 1 or 2 rooms into
Either
escaping.
extreme. Okay.
Yeah, and it was, like, my sweet spot, and it kind of, you need to fine tune it for every group and the play style
Mm-hmm.
and all that. But generally speaking, if there are 4 players plus the person running the game, you want like 1 or maybe 2 people to survive. Like, to me, that's the sweet spot. That allows some level of betrayal, some level of oh no, or laughing at how someone expires.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want everyone to check out, because you want someone at the end who gives the final in memoriam of the crewmates who just died, to like wrap up the game at the end. Basically, what did we all learn today, kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, really, that was the part, that was the trick. The first real big play test
Mm-hmm.
I did with a couple friends and my wife. I didn't have a third act, and I was like, okay, I warned them ahead of time, this game is just going to stop, and we're going to talk about where we think it should go.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was really the first, like, I was thinking this, and we played the game for hour and a half, had a great time, hit that kind of dead halt, and
Mm-hmm.
then they all kind of ran off like, well, here's where I thought it was going, here's what felt right to me, and we
Mm-hmm.
spent another hour and a half just talking about ways that might go.
Yeah.
And as you know, and I that was the way a lot of the early playtesting went. And once I hit kind of a ratio of rooms to dice to player count, etc., that seemed right, at least for the people I played with. It was really just very fine tuning after that point,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that people felt, with a game like this, it's so reliant on being loud as a player, on being kind of tacky and big and larger than life and very reality TV star. Getting people warmed up in the first couple
Mm-hmm.
rooms that you explore. After that, it really just gets on rails and practically plays itself.
Okay. And you briefly talked about the kind of structure and the mechanics of the game, because you mentioned like different phases and things like that. Can you talk about how the game's structured? So if we talk about the mechanics a little bit now.
Sure. Yeah, there's only 2 stats you got to keep track of. You have points that you spend between them. I think 5 points, between survive and provoke.
Okay.
And the way these, and this is going back to when I first started trying to work on a game 20 years ago. I like stats that represent like diametric opposing forces within a character. So your survive as a reality star is your ability to be level-headed, to think clearly,
Mm-hmm.
and to act rationally and not dramatically, to actually make the best choices,
Mm-hmm.
which affects your ability later on to survive when the ghost starts chasing everyone and taking swings at you. The other
Okay.
one is provoke, and provoke is the one that, like, that's what people turn into reality TV shows for. They
Mm-hmm.
want to see people being loud. They want to see people being antagonistic, melodramatic, making mountains out of molehills. If survive is your level-headedness, provoke is your ability to just kind of go nuts. And those
Yeah.
things are, you have to spend your points between them. So one's going to be higher than the other, most likely. You have to make some choices about what's more important to your character, and to what degree. It could be a pretty even split,
Mm-hmm.
like a 3-2, or it could be
Yeah.
much more dramatic, like a 4-1. If you're a 4 provoke and a 1 survive, you are super entertaining to watch, but also a huge pain in the neck. Or just big, just very large, just a
Mm-hmm.
very big presence on camera. And those are really the things you use those stats, and what you do as your so stepping back, um, when you're playing the game, basically what you're doing is, you as a group are building the location together. There's a couple tables up front that help you generate, where's the haunting, what is the supposed cause of the haunting, other little details like that.
Mm-hmm.
At which point, you go room by room, and you start going around the table, identifying features in the room, talking to the camera,
Mm-hmm.
infighting with each other, doing reality TV star stuff. And as you get wilder and more provocative, and you're making dice rolls against your stat to see just how,
Mm-hmm.
like, let's say, supernaturally significant the things you're doing are, how much they're stirring the dead, it starts to generate effects in the rooms you're going to. The walls start bleeding, or the eyes on a painting start falling. Whatever it is feels right in the moment for the setting. And you kind of hit these thresholds once you hit certain numbers of rolls where the stakes start to elevate and the level of haunting. And by that point, there's two things going on. One, you're kind of mapping out the floor plan piece by piece, laying down an index card for each room. Here's what's in this room. Next room, here's what's in this room. You're also together kind of building the story of what the ghost is. You've got, your fake psychic who's pulling, making stuff up about the ghost, or picking up authentic vibes, or you've got the ex-police detective who like knows something about the murders that happened here, and he's relaying information. The host is trying to yell at the ghost to provoke it to fight, and he's adding details. And that's the magic of it, is that the story of the ghost in the place starts to emerge naturally as you're all going. And so by the time you get to the final thing, which is you find a final room, you figure out some kind of ultimate summoning ceremony to bring the ghost onto camera, your big finale or whatever, you have a pretty clear idea of what this ghost is, why this place is haunted, like, and the history of it, like what actually happened here. At which point the ghost will arrive, turn on you, and start chasing you back through all the rooms you just created together. And then it goes the game does this, and then it just takes off right when it gets to that point, and hits kind of that high action, oh my God, we got to get out of here, we're about to die, like moment, basically.
And I mean, yeah, it sounds like a great time. I'm just picturing some certain moments. If we could talk about some of the characters and how character creation is, because obviously you said it's like a zero prep, you just come down and play. So obviously I assume character creation is something you do when you sit down at the table as part of it. And like you say, it's not a lot of stats, it's not very complicated. Is there any kind of guidance on archetypes or things like that in the book? Or
Yeah, it's truly, I want people to pick up their favorite tropes from these kinds of shows and run with it. But I do supply like 5 archetypes and then some examples of how those might play out. So there's the face, who's kind of the main host person. The face's buddy, who's very much like the hanger-on entourage dude, who's kind of worthless, but he's the face's best friend from back in the day, so he's there. There's the cameraman, who, at least in the way that in the games that I've played, the camera person tends to be a lot more sane. Not always, but sometimes they tend to be a little more like they're the director, who's the GM. They're like their person in the building, trying to keep things moving, basically. And then there's a couple other classic archetypes. There's sort of the academic, which could be like the professor from the university, or the ex-cop who knows about the crimes that happened here, or someone who knows something, whether or not that's total BS. They're the ones who are brought into the show to like bring credibility to the investigation. And then there's the charlatan archetype, which is most classically like the psychic, basically. I'm picking up strange signal, vibes in this room, whatever it is. And there's a lot of ways that can go, but the classic is like the crystals, the tarot cards, the whatever, and they're just sort of making it up as they go. And then I have kind of ways that breaks down by stat, and again, it's just the 2, survive and provoke, and kind of different ways to play it. Even within those very simplistic archetypes in the play groups, there's been a lot of diversity in how they actually play out.
With that diversity in the different groups, do you have any good stories or any particular favorite ways some people have played some of those kind of archetypal characters?
Yeah, I've mentioned the ex-cop because that was a playtester, Jeff. That was his swerve on the academic, which I honestly had not considered to that point, and thought it was really smart. That he very much played this like gruff, ex-detective with the walrus mustache who speaks, in this real gruff, rough voice, authoritatively about everything. He was very brave up until the moment he was not brave anymore. I thought that was really good. Yeah, exactly. There's the kind of, for me, the archetypal charlatan is the example one in the book that Emily, who's one of the original playtesters, came up with. And she had a bag full of skulls from her pet cats who had died over the years. And she used those in the final summoning circle to like do a pentagram out of cat skulls, and had names for the cat skulls. And it just like, it's very, like those two. Those two really jumped out at me. And another one, Jason, playtester, he did like your very straightforward kind of academic, and that he was like a university professor who was on the skids. But he was like very openly mercenary, like, where's my check? Like, I'm just like, please don't talk to me. Like I don't want to be here. It's just very, and then last one, my favorite face was played as an ex-football star who is very clearly trying to be like Shaquille O'Neal, who does like 1,000 other things now that he's not doing sports anymore. So he was just talked in football cliches the whole time, which was super, super fun. Yeah, those are probably like, of all those types. Okay, last one. My favorite cameraman is also the example in the book was Jordan, one of the initial playtesters, that first batch. He did an X Games, and I don't know if you're familiar with the X Games. They're like the extreme sports Olympics, like
Okay.
snowboarding and all that. And it was left up to a mystery. How do you get fired from the X Games as a cameraman? Like, what do you do to get fired from that job? And he just kind of left that a very ominous mystery. But yeah, those are kind of my favorites, and some of those made it into the book because they felt so like, yes, this person has figured out a really good way to proceed. If you don't know what else to do, play this character, and you can run.
You mentioned earlier with characters that obviously the game works really well if people are being quite like loud and extreme and bombastic with some of the roles there. With new players that are kind of perhaps new to role playing, how do you have like kind of any guidance of how to ease them into the game? Because sometimes some people feel a little bit reserved the first time they come to the table.
For sure. Yeah, no. And that was definitely a big part of early playtesting, was figuring out how to get people over that hump. So as part of character creation, as slim as it is, there are questions for each archetype, basically, to think about the character's background and to think about their relationship with each other, who they're friends with, who they might have a rivalry with, to start to kind of preload some drama, essentially. And there's also kind of suggestions as well for the director, who's the GM, who in the fiction is the guy out in the van watching everything on monitors and like prodding through the earpiece for them to continue on and do stuff, to give the director like direction with questions and, hey, check this out, hey, do this, hey, go that, to like kind of get people going. Rather than turns or rounds, the game kind of works on room by room. You do a room, you define its features, you have some drama, you move on to the next room, and it usually takes like a couple rooms, and at that point I think everyone gets kind of loosened up and understands who the characters are and has felt out the vibe with each other, both consciously and subconsciously, how big they want to go, how loud they want to go. And it kind of takes off from there, basically.
And with for the director as well, the person running the game, what sort of advice would you give to them, running killer ratings beyond obviously easing people into the game, that we've gone
Sure.
through here?
If you're kind of unfamiliar with the genre, which is both the reality TV shows, but also a fair number of found footage horror films like Grave Encounters, a couple others like that are very much playing in this space where it's a reality TV crew. They go to an asylum, bad stuff happens. It's probably good to watch one or two of those just to sort of get what the tropes are, get kind of how it unfolds. It has a lot of that Blair Witch sort of escalation where it kind of goes and goes, and then like ramps up like crazy in that final act. It very much follows that formula. So there's that. I would be, kind of work out ahead of time who might be the one piece that might be considered prep, is having an idea who might be the face, because at least in the early room or two, they're the ones who are probably going to end up driving the actions as the quote unquote host of the show. So kind of identifying who in the group might be good, who is, has the least inhibitions or is the most experienced role-playing games to like help push it a little bit. But honestly, it's kind of getting in their ear, so to speak, as the director in the earpiece, asking questions, prompting people to go and kind of seeing where the comfort levels are, and teasing out typical interview thing, not relying so much on yes, no questions, but a little more open-ended, that allows people to like contribute to the invention of the story of the place, the layout of the place, gives them some ownership, basically, and then they start to get more comfortable at that point.
Yes. Well, I've got some questions here in the chat as well. Someone has said that their friend Jason would make an excellent host by the sound of things. So already casting in their mind for this game. But someone has a question. They've asked if you or anyone in your family has ever seen a ghost.
I don't think so. Maybe I haven't. I didn't realize it. Despite being a lifelong spooky, thinking about death a normal amount type person, I'm very much when we die, we're worm food kind of person. I just don't like, it's just, there's no actual nothing. Nope. There's nothing there. But I understand, like, I've been in spaces that I'm like spooked in for reasons that are hard to define. And, I get the kind of biological argument about instincts and dark corners and, all the usual whatever. No, I don't think so. Honestly, I would like to be wrong about that. But I don't believe I have. It's definitely something I've always, even as a kid, I've enjoyed ghost stories as kind of a lens
Hmm.
into the cultures that produced them.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think so, unfortunately. You know, the day's young. Who knows?
Who knows? Okay, well,
Mhm.
something to look forward to. With people that have played the game, have you had people that have a similar view to you that are like, yeah, it's not real, or have you had anyone? Or I don't know if that comes up in the game, whether people are like, yeah, no, this is legit.
I don't know if it's directly come out in game. I have my
Mm.
suspicions about some of my players. So
Okay.
whether they've like, okay, there might be something here. Similarly, think about death the normal amount inclined people. Yeah,
So you hang out with, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of, yeah. I don't know if it goes there tonally when we play the games. It's there is the ghost always emerges, the chase always happens. Like the structure of it is always the same, but so much of it is about the interaction between very mundane people with each
Hmm.
other. Like I feel like that's the real impetus of it. Like it's cool to essentially ascend or invent a ghost story together. But I feel like the vibe is very much like, it's a story. We're having fun. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, no, I don't know though. If my players are out there, please let me know. I'd be very interested to hear that.
And you mentioned as well, which I thought was interesting, because you talked about interesting how different cultures have slightly different ghost
Mhm.
stories, which is very true. So this one does feel like an American kind of ghost story type thing. Have you had people from different places kind of play that and feedback on it, or did
Not that
everyone lean into the American tropes of it?
in my playtest, it's been American audiences, just the people I
Hmm.
know. I know, and I did
Yeah.
an Indiegogo for this at the start of the year, February,
Hmm.
thereabouts. And it did have like an international audience, and I'm starting to get back feedback from people who've
Uh-huh.
played together. But yeah, I'm very curious about that as well, because I definitely almost intentionally leaned into what would be American. It's the asylum,
Hmm.
it's the hospital, it's the cruise ship, it's it's our collective national guilt stuff. Like, like this, like I know asylums
Yep.
in particular in the UK definitely a thing. So I'm curious about that. No, my audiences have been pretty America centric, but that's
Hmm.
that's one of those, like I say, literally just in the past couple of days, I've started to get people come back to me with, oh, I ran a group and we did this. I ran a group and we did that. Someone
Hmm.
told me yesterday, the other day, I recommend 3 to 5 players plus the director, and they told me they played with 9 people,
Oh
um,
wow.
and said it was awesome. And like I desperately need details about that, because that
Yeah.
sounds like so much. But yeah, no, I'm pretty excited to hear about that.
But maybe they liked a lot as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting, because I assume the rules, the way they're written, you can set it anywhere. So if you
Hmm.
wanted it to be like in a British castle or something like that, and that would
Hmm.
have perhaps very different vibes from something like that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and someone said we do have Most Haunted in the UK, which is the one I was talking about earlier as well. But yeah, so that goes in there.
I need to see if
Um,
that's streaming. I'm a little out of the loop lately. Honestly, I started thinking about this game years ago, and I
oh
honestly
yeah.
haven't watched any reality TV ghost hunting in a bit. So I need to re up on that. Yeah.
Well, like you said, it has been doing years. So it came to Indiegogo, did you say earlier this year?
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, but you've mentioned like it's been years you've been working on this. So how long is the development process for a game like this?
This one started with it was very much again kind of the Grant Howitt kind of one-page RPGs, and then a little bit of Goblin Quest as well.
Hmm.
As everyone does, a lot of his games, the tables are so fun and so funny, the combinations that you can get. So the very first iteration of this are the tables that are right up front, the ones that
Hmm.
help you determine the show name and like location and the nature of the
Yeah.
haunting and those kinds of things. That was the first thing, and I wrote that stuff 5 years ago.
Oh wow.
And that
Okay.
was, yeah, and I really just kind of sat on it forever and play tested here and there, but never really approached it in an organized fashion.
Hmm.
Um, and once I got the bug, I mentioned earlier, I kind of hit that point where it was, what am I
Hmm.
waiting for? Get on with things. It was very much like, if I do nothing else, I will publish this thing, I will get it out of my head, and that will be the end of it. Like, like I can quit RPGs tomorrow. I made this happen. It's done. It's out of my head. Which is very much that, that writing compulsion thing. It's in there. Like I can see the shape of it. I can see how it would play. Um, but yeah, I really started back into it in earnest maybe 2 years ago, and that was when the playtesting really began. Yeah, I'd say 2 years and a couple months now. 3 years, no, whew, yeah, 2020. I keep forgetting that was the year that existed. 3 years.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, no, that whole thing just disappeared.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no. So 3 years and change really started in earnest, and that's when I did that first playtest with some friends where I didn't have a third act yet, and we just started talking it out. and I kind of picked at it here and there for the next couple of years. And then last February was when I really got going again, and that was like, all right, sit down, write this damn thing. It's funny that it really only started getting in people's inboxes and mailboxes a couple months ago, because mostly it was written like a year ago. Like this, and that cover that Benjamin Hall did, a comic artist I've worked with often in my old comic days. He finished that last September, something like that, and he'd been working on it for months in between other things he was working on. So it comes, it's one discrete package. You feel like, oh, okay, this would take a few months work, but honestly, years of thinking, noodling, putting it on the back burner, pulling it back up, new idea hits, play testing, got to rewrite the third act, like all that kind of stuff. It really took a long time for such a this is true of all writing. On the surface, it's very simple, but it is it's really hard to write stuff that's simple.
Yeah,
really hard.
definitely. I think it is very, and it's also very difficult to write something and make it look easy, actually, because if it looks easy, it really probably wasn't.
Yeah, no.
So thinking of easy and difficult, what were the most kind of challenging parts of creating this game?
So the honestly, the easiest part and what made it, the rest kind of flow down the hill from there, was those tables helped me set a tone, like a tone of voice, which to me, as a writer first kind of person who makes stuff, once I figured out the tone.
Oh, internet cut out there for me. I'm not sure if that was me or Ken. Hopefully they'll jump back in a bit. The issue of live. I will just turn it off and on again. Let's try see how that goes. So unfortunately, going to have to listen to me for a moment. So we're talking about killer ratings if you just joined. Unfortunately, we have a slight tech issue. Ken just jumped off for a moment, but I'm sure we'll get them back in just a moment. But if you have any questions for Ken, please feel free to add them in the comments. We'll get them back on. Yeah, Ken got the blue screen of death. And this is the ghosts have found. I hope the ghosts have not found Ken, because if that is the case, then are they on their way for me? Is coming back for me is the next thing. And someone else has commented, yeah, the stream is fine. It's just Ken occasionally becomes stuck and temporarily does not experience linear time. Much like Doctor Who then. So being British, I can indeed relate to that for certain. Quick, what's the survival score? So if anyone has been playing killer ratings already, what if you have any stories or things to share in the chat whilst we're just waiting for Ken to come back, that might be a good thing to kind of share about, because I'd love to hear about what you've been doing playing the game if you're a fan of that there. Also, with the game, if you're looking at this and you're interested in getting a copy for yourself, you can get that at bannerlessgames.itch.io. And not only that, Ken has also arranged a discount for you if you're watching this. I'm going to put the link down in the chat there. So it has the Not DnD link in there. We'll give you 25% off this game. So if you have a look on there, that'll get 25% off, and that's on there for the next 2 weeks. So if you're interested in this game and you're getting an excellent deal, then they'll get that on there. And I have excellent news. The ghosts did not find Ken. Ken has returned, and I'm going to put them back on the screen now. Hello, you have returned.
Sorry about that. I have not seen a blue screen in quite a while. That was a throwback. Yeah, sorry.
No problem. It happens.
I remember where I was. I can pick up if that's cool.
Yeah.
So tone of voice. Once I nailed down the tone of voice, that glib cynicism, that fun, like, we're here to have a good time. We're here to kind of betray each other in a fun, laughable way and probably die. Kind of figured it out from there. The hardest part, honestly, was that third act. Like, I'm not a systems guy. I'm a story guy. I'm a narrative guy. So even that little bit of math to figure out like what's about the right amount of time for the game to go on before, like, okay, we've done this, let's move on to the next part of the gameplay loop. I think once I kind of cracked that flow and ran it through a couple play tests, and like, oh yeah, no, this is it. This is the game. This is what I was picturing in my head, how it should feel. I feel like that was the bit. And finally, honestly, the hardest part genuinely is, again, I'm a writer. I'm not a designer. I'm not an art director. I'm not an illustrator. The layout, I had to teach myself how to do that. And it's definitely the first thing I ever laid out. And I see a bunch of things in it now that I would change, but that's always the way with creative stuff. Yeah. So teaching myself all the other things around writing I can do all day. Everything else I had to learn.
Yeah, layout's a really tricky thing as well. I'm impressed that you picked that up to do that, because that's quite tricky with the layout style. Obviously the cover looks quite kind of comic book and things like that. Did you go for that internally as well? Has it got those sorts of themes?
Yeah, it was kind of a convergence of experience, and I thought it was right for the game. One, I've self-published a lot of comic books. I know how to work with those printers. Like, I know how to make a comic book. Thank you, Ghostly Boogaloo. Nice. But I thought it helped with the vibe too. Again, I wanted to be like a fun, loose kind of, in a way, in the best possible way, kind of a disposable game. Like these characters are kind of disposable. Like, don't overthink it. Don't treat it too preciously. Like, have fun with it.
It's a one shot.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought this kind of like staple bound comic book style would help with that, help set that tone. Like, this is something you can roll up and put in your back pocket. It's something you can have sitting on top of your toilet, like, or bedside or whatever. Just like pick it up, read a couple pages, chuckle, put it away. If nothing else, if anyone out there is like me, you read a lot more role-playing games than you actually play. So, just wanted to make it like a fun object to have. And I felt like that really leaned into it. So I worked with Ben, who's the cover artist, who did the art himself. I've worked on stuff with him before. I knew, like, he does fun, goofy horror really well, so I knew he'd be right for this. And then I worked with another friend of mine, Josh Crack, who helped with the making it, that with the word balloons and the corner box and all that. The inspiration being sort of Bronze Age horror comics that had, thankfully for me, a lot of blurbs all over them, so you could dump all kinds of info on that cover and it still feels natural. Like, it still feels like it belongs there. Because it's a flip book. I don't have a back that like describes the game, so I need that front to do all the work. And yeah, that really just kind of leaned into it, and it came out looking exactly like I wanted it to, which made me happy.
Always good when that happens. Yeah, we've got people in the chat that are relating to the just having lots of RPG books but not actually playing them. And as John's saying here, feeling guilty about having a big pile of RPGs that stares accusingly at you whenever you go to play D&D. But this show is not D&D, so we're here to talk about different games. And if you do want to try Killer Ratings, as I mentioned before, you can go and get a 25% off the game by following the link I put in the chat, which is boundlessgames.itch.io/notdnd. And if you're listening to the podcast, the link will be in the show notes there. But it's only available for 2 weeks, so get it now if you're wanting a nice discount. Give it a try. So this game, we talked about the different ways you can play this, but there was a variant I really do want to talk about, which is this, which is Targ Margs. I was delighted when I discovered this when I was doing my research. Ken, could you please give the kind of elevator pitch and the summary of this kind of hack on the game?
Sure, it would be my pleasure. I truly love Targ Margs. Targ Margs is about being drunk with your friends in a Target superstore. Yeah, no, that's it. You get up to shenanigans and you try to evade security and just have a good, wholesome kind of hooligan time in that scenario.
Amazing. As somebody has asked, how much death is in Targ Margs? And someone has commented, is it the normal amount?
For like a trip to Target, the normal amount of death, yes. And tell me, I don't know. Do you have Targets in the UK? Are you familiar? Should I explain?
No, it's like a big. No, we do have some brands of it. It's like a big superstore. It's like a big supermarket. We have, I think Target owns or Walmart owns like an Asda brand, but it's that sort of thing. Yeah.
It's 1/3 groceries and then 2/3 home goods and electronics and all that, plant, all kinds of stuff. Yeah. It's the true all-in-one. And this was, I like to say, based on a true story. This is a favorite date night activity for me and my wife. I do the driving, she does the margaritas, and we just wander around Target for an hour, and she gets very excited because it's like, yeah, I don't know what is comparable where you are, but like it's a superstore. They would not call themselves a discount store. It kind of is, but they keep it nice and clean and kind of fashionable. And the stuff is generally good and the prices are good and the clothes are good. So it's fun to just kind of wander around aimlessly and and just say, "Ooh, what about this? Ooh, look at that. Ooh, what about this?" And just kind of be goofy for an hour or two. And that's the basis. We really just if you die a lot in killer ratings, this one, it's really just security might catch you and throw you out, and that's the end. It's like a step down in terms of like stakes. Very much like
Yes.
PG-13, like a little gentler, a little more, as this cover kind of gives, like a little more whimsical in a way. Like it's meant to be silly and over the top
Yes.
in that way.
What sort of characters do you get in this game then? So do you have someone that's the designated driver and someone
Yeah,
who's
yeah.
the
It's honestly not a bad idea. No, I made this one kind of deliberately no GM, so it has the
Okay.
same basic mechanics as killer ratings, but
Hmm.
my suggestion in it is to create a character is to just be yourself, or for more fun, play someone else at the table. If
Oh,
everyone else, yeah,
that's such a good. I love
yeah,
that.
just
Yeah.
like nicely, kindly, fun, but but yeah, to play someone else at the table and just kind of be yourselves. There's not really archetypes or classes or whatever. You do still have that same basic breakdown between the stats I call Targ and Margs, which is the same deal. Targ is your ability to like be a normal shopper, and Margs is your like, oh, let's build a pillow fort in the middle of the aisle. And unlike killer ratings, um, targs will slowly decrease over time and margs will slowly increase, and they actually have two different roll charts. So depending on which one is your dominant trait, you'll use a different roll chart that will kind of guide your behavior from department to department, whether you kind of like get up to no good, whether you try to shoplift something, just it's very much just about the place, and the people are just like, just be yourself or be your friend. uh you know
I absolutely love that idea of just play someone
Mhm.
else at the table,
Mhm.
especially if you're sitting around the table with a few margaritas as well.
Mhm.
And I think when Ken said PG-13, they were not implying that 13-year-olds visit Target drunk. No, I believe the drinking age in the USA is 21, but in the UK it's 18.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yes, so we have some people saying I want to play this now. So how can they get a copy of this? Is this do you need to buy this separately? Is it on
No,
the
it's
same
so
link as before?
yeah, it's included in. So I did the Indiegogo, and the one stretch goal
Hmm.
I did because I really just wanted to focus on the main game was unlocking Targmargs. So it's
Hmm.
included in the PDF, or if you get the print copy, it's a flip book. So it's included in the same thing there. Yeah. Yeah, so it's in there, and there's even a lovely spread of people getting up to Targmarg shenanigans to help you give an idea. It's almost done like a board game style with kind of the map going around, and you can kind of see there's our never ending story riding the target dog with the margarita. There's the
Hmm.
shopping cart demolition derby. I very much like the guy who's climbing the top of like a Starbucks cup dome with like a flag made out of a Target receipt.
Yes,
Stuff. It's just it's silly. But no, it's all the same price. It's included in killer ratings. It's really just kind of which one are you feeling tonight, and which one is the right mood. It's very
definitely.
much yeah, like it's kind of like it's for people who've never played these kind of games before, but it's also our regular game group is meeting. One person can't make it
Hmm.
tonight, or we just want to do something different tonight. Pick up one of these and go.
Amazing. So it's what I'm hearing you say is not only have you given us a 25% off voucher, we've also got 2 games for 1. And just a reminder, if you want that 25% off, it's bannerlessgames.itch.io/not DnD, and that's
Mhm.
available for the next 2 weeks. So whether you're more ghosts or you're more margaritas, there's something there for everyone to enjoy.
Mhm.
We are coming up to near the end of the hour now. So if anybody has any questions for Ken, now is your time to ask them. Otherwise, you'll have to go on the internet, on social media to Bannerless Games and contact him there. But if you have any questions for now, well, we're all here. But Ken, is there anything else you want to share about the games? Any questions that you'd like to answer that I haven't asked you? Or
No, I think we well covered it. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. It's very pretty happy. I'm very happy with how it turned out. It
yeah.
has been a long trek to get to this point, even though it is on the surface a very simple thing. This is a lot of time, thinking, effort, like a lot of working with friends, a lot of writing, rewriting, figuring out how to lay stuff
Hmm.
out. Like it was so much got to this point. Um, I don't know if you're like me and you're waiting for someone to say get started. Here you go, get started.
Hmm. Someone's asked if they're in the UK, can they get the print edition? Does it do international shipping, or is it just US shipping?
It's US right now, but honestly, I can work with I've got a fulfillment person, Sarah McHenry, who helps me ship things out. I don't see why not. I just need to take a look at shipping. You've probably felt this in other Kickstarters and print editions. Shipping international right now is tough.
Yes.
It kind of came down to guilt. Honestly, I don't want to charge you twice the cover price to get it to you. But I'll see what I can figure out in that. I'll be looking at that in the next week or so.
Okay, great. But definitely the PDF version is available on that link. So
Everywhere.
Wherever you are in the world, you can get that. But yeah, if you are somewhere outside the US and you would like a physical copy, it sounds like if you just contact Ken there via the link, and he'll take a look and see. But yeah, international shipping is wild at the moment. I do all the kind of logistics and operation stuff at EM Publishing. So very relatable content there.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And someone's just suggested to stand on the East Coast and just chuck it really hard. It'll eventually
like skip off the ocean. I'd like a rock. I think that would work. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It'll hit the UK or Europe or somewhere. I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine. But yeah, so it seems like you have an international audience for the game now. So having talked about the game there, we talked about your games. The question I always ask people near the end is, what are your favorite RPGs that is not a game that you've made and is not Dungeons and Dragons?
Sure. The two I'm kind of like obsessed with, and that really helped me get back into the hobby, like in a very intentional way in the past couple of years, are Blaze in the Dark and Borkborg. Those are not just the games themselves, which design wise and kind of like what they focus on, they care a lot about the same things I do in a role-playing game. But they're also, the communities are really friendly and accessible and helpful. The first big thing I ever published was an adventure for Morkborg, and that Discord was so encouraging and so friendly, which is funny because it's such a bleak, dark, whatever kind of game. But they are like truly just the nicest people, from the top down. Honestly, they're very open. They've got a working doc that has all their fonts, all their colors, where they get all their art. Like they want people to join them in making things. So in terms of, I like the game, I like to design all that, but everything that drives it, I also really, really like. And then the one I'm like about to pick up and wanting to look at is High Magic Low Lives by Gem Room Games. I know those folks over there, and like the things they've talked about, not at me, just seeing them talk about the game and some of the design decisions they made has made me go, ooh, I need to check that out. So you asking that question was my reminder. It's at the top of my wish list to just like, let's pull the trigger on that already, and find that out.
Some great recommendations there. We've also had a great recommendation in the chat to combine the two games. So they suggested do a marathon session of this game first, where you have the ghost, and then the ghost group does a Task Marks run before the last episode of filming.
You go get their supplies.
So you could combine them. I'm sure that would work. It's the same basic mechanics. So yeah, I'm sure that would be fine. On that note, I think it might be time to end the stream, because the questions are going into that place. So I just want to say to everybody watching, thank you so much for coming and watching another episode of Not D&D. We live stream every Monday at 10 p.m. BST. And if you miss out, you can catch up at enliverpg.com. And we also have our podcast as well. If you look at Not D&D, wherever you listen to podcasts, you'll find it there. I want to say thank you, Ken, so much. Thank you for coming on and sharing your game with us, talking about it. And for the 25% discount, again, the links are in the show notes, so you can check that out. Next week, we have another guest. We're talking about Broken Tales with Tommaso De Benetti. So talking about another indie RPG there. So thank you so much for coming along to listen. And Ken, thank you so much for your time and coming on to speak to us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
No problem. On that note, I will say goodbye. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.